Hello, and welcome to the Pragmatic Live podcast series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Kalogeris, Vice President of Marketing at Pragmatic Institute, and your host for this episode. Today, we are joined by Mike Belsito, co-founder of Product Collective, co-organizer of Industry the Product Conference, and genuinely passionate product pro. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, Mike, I know that you're probably still recovering because just last month in September, you had your industry conference with over 1,200 people in Cleveland.
Yes, I feel like I am finally recovered, which is a good thing. But
excellent.
It was awesome. It was our best industry yet. This was the fifth time that we ran what we consider to be our global edition, which takes place every fall in Cleveland, Ohio. But I feel like we're hitting our stride now, and now I'm pretty pumped for the European edition coming in the spring, and then it won't be long before we're really in the midst of planning Industry 2020.
So the industry conference to me is we had a whole bunch of people there. You had us on Podcast Row, which was a fantastic edition. I loved it. But I also think one of the things for me that sets industry apart from the other conferences is really how authentic it is, right? I think you bring together passionate people. You make it about the conversations. You make it about the industry, truly not just a name, in a way where it feels like all those connections, even with that many number of people, feel very authentic and very valuable. So kudos to you, sir.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And, we definitely try. I mean, I think part of it is we're product people too. This is something that we created, truly out of passion. I mean, we both had full-time jobs. And when I say we, myself and also my partner, Paul McAdoo, we started this together back, end of 2014 is when we first got together, kind of envisioning what this thing could be. But it was all sort of born out of us as product people wanting to learn more, wanting to, bring some of the best product people in the world to us. And we thought that might help us more too. So I think part of the way that we've approached the conference is just as curious product people. And maybe because of that reason, all those things that you mentioned, they sort of show through, because it is one of these things where we're not making decisions based off of like, hey, what do we think the business requirements are for the, it's not about that. It's about how can we help product people, like what am I curious about? What are some of my product friends curious about, and how can we help sort of shine a light on those things every fall and now every spring for the other industry conferences we do too.
And I think because you are product people and you are honestly interested in it, right? That's sort of what you'd want to learn and how you want to elevate the profession is at the forefront of everything you do, right? It's not about how do I sell a different product or even how do you make money? Although obviously everyone in the world needs to make money of some kind, right? But it's really about how much the product matters. And again, I think you've done a great job over the last 5 years of treating it as a product, which I know means that you are regularly adding and taking things away. Is there anything that you guys tried in this one that was new that maybe tested, or anything from the feedback that you got from this year's conference that you're looking to do differently next year?
Yeah, I mean, so every year I feel like there are features that either we're adding or, features that we're sunsetting. So for instance, one of the things that we, I kind of addressed the last thing, the sunsetting, which is something, by the way, that a lot of product people, we don't love talking about, right? Because we brought a feature to life. We think it's because it's important enough and, it adds value. But then when it gets to a time where maybe it's not adding the same kind of value that, we once thought, it's important to take those features away sometimes. So even though product people may not like to talk about it all the time, it's still necessary. And for us this year, there was actually something we took away. So in the very beginning, when we thought about all of the reasons that people came, there's a few common ones, right? Like some people come because they want to learn from the best product people around, right? Certainly you could do that at bring all sorts of people under one roof. But some people come because they want to make connections with other products. So it's not even necessarily just the speakers that is of interest to them, but it's the other attendees. And that very first year we ran industry, we asked people about how well they were able to connect with other attendees. And we thought we were doing the thing that, needed to be done to help make those connections. We had, all sorts of time for breaks, and there were social events and things like that. So I remember when we did some of those very early interviews with attendees, like, so, when it comes to connecting with other attendees, like, how well were you able to do that? And you say, well, not that well, but it's not your fault. And I'm like, well, who cares about the fault? But like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, well, I know you had the social events, but like, I'm an introverted person. So it just felt weird to like walk up to people and start talking, and I was there by myself. And okay, well, so let us think about that. So one of the things that we did, and I don't remember I think it might have been the second year of industry, or the third, one of those two. But what we did is we emailed all attendees in advance and said, hey, yeah, you want to connect with other attendees, but you might be coming on your own. If you're interested, you can take this brief survey and let us know, the types of people you're looking to connect with, the types of things that you are interested in connecting with people on. So it might be like, hey, I am a new product manager, and I'm interested in connecting with experienced product managers to learn. Or it might be, hey, I'm a very experienced, chief product officer. I'm looking to connect with, maybe less experienced product people so I can mentor them. So it was a survey that everybody took. And then I would actually personally go through every response, and I would hand map people. So anybody that opted into that, they would get connected in advance of the conference to at least two other people. Or not even at least, like they would get connected to two other people. And we would make an email intro, and then this way they kind of had a buddy, that they could look forward to meeting up with while they were there. So people those first couple of years, they really liked that because it was a way for them to connect with people. Right off the bat, they're guaranteed to make a couple new connections here. I can tell you, it takes a lot of work to make that happen, though, right? So it us personally going through every single response, personally trying to match people, and to be candid, all that work happens during crunch time because we don't really, we kind of wait until the very end, not to procrastinate, but to make sure that we're able to help as many people as we can. So we're making those connections like the week. Well, this year we decided to sunset, and it wasn't because it was too much work, so to speak, or it wasn't because it didn't work at all. Like people did enjoy that in the past, but we started introducing new features, if you want to think of it that way, to address the same problem. So one of the things that we did that was brand new last year, and it was so popular, we added it this year. And even then, we had people asking us for more. We scheduled out attendee dinner. And so what these were is we basically would just call around Cleveland and make restaurant reservations for groups of 8 at all different restaurants in Cleveland for the evening after the first day of the conference. And then we created just a simple event page that people can opt into. And each dinner, we kind of focused it around a topic. So one dinner would be about jobs to be done. Another would be about moving up into product leadership. And so every women in product. So we had every dinner had its own topic, and attendees pay for these on their own. This isn't something where we're covering the cost of a dinner. We thought about getting sponsors involved in those, but we wanted there to be, kind of no selling. Those sort of one of the only rules for these dinners, just connecting with other product people. This way, whether you came by yourself or with other team members, this is an opportunity for you to go and meet other people. And they were super popular. I mean, I think close to 100 attendees participated in them this year, and to the point where it maxed out the number of the reservations that we made. And people were asking for even more. And at that point, we can't, the conference tomorrow, we can't really add more at this point. So I mentioned those examples because when you sunset a feature like we did for industry, well, again, it's not because it didn't necessarily work, but the value that it brought relative to the work it took to put it all together, it was just its time to sort of sunset that. And the attendee dinners, a great new feature that we're launching, and now hopefully becomes a mainstay. And now we can look out for more new features to introduce next.
Awesome. Important thing, I think, for everybody with their products, right? It can actually be very hard to sunset features of a product. It can be very hard to sunset tactics and techniques in a marketing campaign, right? Things that you come attached to. So I think all of our audience can kind of get that idea, but it's so important because we all have finite number of resources. So if I'm going to invest in something new, I have to let something go. So always good.
Yeah.
So you had 1,200 people there. I know you had a bunch of different speakers and attendees. Were there any big common themes or any big aha moments that came up at the conference?
Yeah. I mean, so there were a few themes that sort of emerged almost organically, I'd say. So when I look back at all of the talks, I mean, there were 20 plus speakers from all sorts of different groups, everybody from, large enterprises like Comcast. We actually had the executive director for product for the X1 division of Comcast, Xfinity X1, to Imagineer from Walt Disney Imagineering, somebody that actually works on internal products for the Imagineering team, and everybody in between. So 20 plus speakers this year. I will say there are some themes that again sort of naturally emerged. One of those was it's important for us as product people to manage our time better. I mean, this has kind of came up multiple times, and I think sometimes with these talks, you expect to hear talk on maybe some sort of new framework for product management or how to work with customers better. But this kind of struck a chord with me because so many product people were always starved for time, and we're, the mantra of like, oh, not enough time in the day. I feel like that's such a common one for product people, and it causes a lot of stress and anxiety. So we had John Zaratsky, who he's actually the co-architect of the design sprint framework. He created that concept when he was at GV, which is formerly Google Ventures. But John is the co-author of Sprint, but he's also the co-author of a newer book called Make Time. And with John's talk, I know went on and about, for attendees should actually be more proactive with the time that they spend throughout the week. And it's the small steps and it's sort of habit changes that can make the biggest difference. I know some people, it's like when you think about what's the big thing I should do to make this change, and sometimes it's not about the big strategic thing. It's almost about those small steps and just sort of those small habits that you can change. One of those that I remember is that, John sort of compared our email inboxes as these to-do lists that are created by other people on how we are to spend our own time. When you think of it that way, it sounds pretty unfair, right? That everybody else in the world is sort of creating our own to-do list. But that's what for a lot of people, including myself, kind of what an email inbox is. I might have an idea of doing 3 or 4 or 5 things today. This is what I'm going to accomplish. And then I check my emails and there's 50 emails. And so I start responding, doing the things that people are asking me to do in my inbox. And all of a sudden, at the end of the day, and I haven't done the things I wanted to do. So what John's suggestion is make those blocks of time for email and make the blocks of time for yourself and do the things that you feel like you need to do first. And, when it's time for email, you'll address email then. But when it's, not that time, you should be working on your own. And so it's kind of a way of approaching your own work. So that was just what John Zaratsky had said. I remember Jason Fried, who's the CEO and co-founder of Basecamp, he talked about time and how he and his team approaches time. And I remember him talking about roadmaps in particular. And, Jason is one of the people I look up to in products for sure. But his opinions aren't necessarily going to be, matched with a lot of other product people. At Basecamp, they don't do roadmaps. They scope out work in just 6-week blocks of time. Anything beyond 6 weeks says it's not really worth my time because I'm going to spend all the time putting together a roadmap. And in 6 weeks, our needs are going to change. Our customers' needs are going to change. We'll figure out what we're going to do after 6 weeks when that time comes. But I'm not going to spend the time to create a roadmap that goes out for a full year if 80% of that stuff is probably not going to end up getting done anyway. So that's one theme that came out. Another theme that comes to mind for me has less to do with product people as individuals, but more about the teams that product people work with. Because let's face it, like product is a team sport. We're not product people, creating products on our own. In fact, we're not the ones usually creating much of anything. It's, our UX colleagues are the ones that are actually designing. The engineering team are the ones that are actually developing the software for the product. Sales and marketing are on the front lines actually selling products and making sure that our customers know about the product. So I know Claire Sulentrop, for example, when she talked about marketing, it's something that not a lot of product people think about quite often. at least from her perspective, the marketing team can not only be an ally, but could almost be our secret weapon, when we're launching products. And what she said happens very often with a lot of companies is that the marketing team's brought on so late in the process. It's like, hey, we're ready to launch this thing next week or the next couple of weeks. Like, can you write up, some marketing materials to help us do that? And what Claire was sort of imploring product people to do is bring that marketing team on, whatever time you thought it should, is right to bring them on months sooner, because they're probably, doing things that you don't even know about. They probably have activities that have dependencies you don't even know about. So the earlier on we can work with our marketing team, the more that we could treat the marketing team as an extension of our product team and, or partners of the product team, have a regular communication schedule with them, even when there's not anything, sort of being launched in the moment, but bringing them in on the things that we're working on. It's just, you're going to have a much more successful launch, most likely, when the time comes for product launches, and other times, just they become our allies. So there are other speakers that talk about teams too, but when you bring up the thought of themes at industry, that's kind of what comes to mind, just as a few examples. And that's just sort of scratching the surface.
That's awesome. So, you mentioned also, actually I have a question before I go.
Yeah.
Different question. Fix that, Morgan. So one of the things I think is interesting and that always kind of surprises me is that you have sort of one big name, sort of person that comes speaks at industry that is not necessarily part of the product field, right? And this year you had Common.
Yes. Yeah.
And I find it, tell me a little bit more about why you do that and in general, what your goal is in there and how that sort of fits with the vision of your company.
Yeah. Well, it's something we've actually done for a few years. It's just in a little bit of a different way. I mean, from the very beginning, we've actually had this idea that, hey, we can learn from people that aren't necessarily the quote unquote traditional product people. We can learn from people that maybe are doing things that are sort of tangential to product. Maybe there's some analogs that we could draw. So from the very beginning, we've had people like Ilana Karp, who is the chief culinary officer at Pragmatic, who, again, she does work in product. You want to think of it that way, but her product is food, and the meal kits that Plated puts together, and how they approach, creating those very meal kits. So she was an early speaker. Graham Vesey, who's the founder of a company called Man Can, which is wine in a can, basically, that he brought to market. He's also a developer, and not a software developer, but a neighborhood developer. There's a neighborhood in Cleveland called Hingetown that he brought to life. Now if you were to ask people in Cleveland where Hingetown is, oh yeah, he'd give you directions. But like Hingetown as a brand, if you want to think of it that way, was never a thing before just a few years ago. So Graham essentially created this pocket of a neighborhood in Cleveland. And so we've had speakers like that come in and talk about products that they've worked on that, again, maybe to software product people, it seems like it might be out of left field. But what we learned is that people usually leave after those talks pulling away things that they didn't realize that they would pull away. And that was our goal. That was our intent. Last year and this year is the first time where we actually decided to have speakers like that, but on a celebrity level. So last year it was BJ Novak, who's one of the lead writers for The Office. And for those that watch The Office, he was Ryan the intern. This year it was Grammy and Academy Award winning artist Common, who, again, most people think of as a, rapper and hip hop artist, and a film actor. But the reality is he's a creative professional, just like we as product people are creative professionals. And we like the idea of bringing in these people where, again, you're not going to see these folks. You're not going to see BJ Novak or Common at most other product conferences, that's for sure. But when you actually hear their stories and hear their talks, we think it's kind of a, it's sort of hopefully a refreshing change of pace for people. It's an opportunity for them to get to maybe connect with these celebrities on a level they might not have before. We actually always have these celebrities then join our talk shops, which for those of you that have never been in an industry, immediately after the main stage, the last two speakers join us in our talk shop stage. And the talk shop stage is smaller. It is where attendees can actually ask questions to our speakers. So it's sort of like our version of an audience Q&A, if you will. So we allow the attendees to ask the questions directly to the celebrity speakers too. It's not like these celebrity speakers just come up on stage and then, bam. And I had the I guess you could say honor, but also it was sort of a scary thing for me. But I was the one to actually interview Common on stage, and I wanted to make sure that the questions that I asked them were questions that I thought could relate to the product as well. And based on the feedback that we got for people after the conference, it seems like that was the case. But yeah, it's one of our one of the characteristics about industry, I think, that just makes it a little bit different, is that we like having those out of the norm speakers, and we'll continue to do that.
One of the things I think it's a good example of is learning by looking outside of your normal area, right? So a lot of the industry is very much about product people learning from other product people, and that's super valuable. But sometimes when we look in a completely different space about how they've solved the problem, it can lead to some really creative and innovative thinking, because you're applying a little bit less of, not necessarily your competition, but you're used to being like, oh, I'm kind of like this, I could do something like that too. But when you're looking at solutions and approaches applied in a different field, and you can figure out how to apply them in product, I think you can see some really disruptive activity. So I think it's a really interesting mind exercise, for lack of a better word, to help people think creatively about and outside the box about product. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I hear he dropped a little rap at the end as well. So that you can't go wrong with that, right? You have your own industry freestyle rap now.
That was pretty fun. I mean, so it was at the very end. It was totally unexpected on our end. It's not something that we had asked for, that he agreed to do in advance or anything like that. No, I just felt it was one of those things I wish I could ask about something like that. I'd be in poor form to
right
him to freestyle or anything. I asked the final question. It was just to wrap things up. He says something, and now and then just starts going into a freestyling about Product Collective in Cleveland, and it was a pretty awesome way to end that day. I'm not gonna lie.
It gives the idea of wrap up a whole new meaning. So that's perfect.
I love it.
Hi, Micah. We have just a few more minutes. Is there anything else, anything that you maybe took away yourself personally from the conference as a product person that you want to share, that you want people to know about?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is we are all in the same boat, trying to figure this whole product thing out. I think back to when I first started my first product role, really, when I was asked to take on this director of product strategy role. And I remember when they asked me, they were recruiting me for this position, and I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be a fit for me. Like, I never went to school for product management. And they were like, oh no, Mike, that's not a thing. Like, nobody went to school for product management. Oh, really? Oh, okay. The short of it is I took that position, but like in my mind, I kept saying, what happens when they figure out I don't know what I'm doing, And so that's what sort of led me to reading books and listening to podcasts and reading blogs and all of that. And ultimately, it's what led us to starting industry, honestly. This kind of yearning for knowledge and information about the product world and what it means to be a product person. But I still feel that way. And I think because there is very little, sort of traditional education in product management, and that's changing. There are some programs that exist now. I actually teach an undergraduate product management class at Case Western Reserve University too. But the reality is we're still all in this thing with there's no like rule book for product management. So we're every year at industry, even people with deep experience, they come and they're still yearning for more, trying to learn more. And so I think that it's sort of a special thing about our field, our discipline, that I think makes conferences like ours, hopefully a necessary thing, but something that actually adds real value. It is something else that, for us at Product Collective, we're trying to think of, okay, how else, knowing that people are trying to, yearn for this information and they feel like they need this constant learning, what else can we do? One of the things we love, spreading the word about Pragmatic Institute's certification courses. I mean, those are the best in the business, and fun when you ask people that are in product management. Hey, how many people have gone through Pragmatic training? And you see so many hands go up. So that's something we continue to do, just spread the word on that. We're also in the process of looking at a roundtable concept. It's something that I wouldn't put it as like it's a finished product. I'd put it as we're still getting feedback from customers on. But if people went to productcollective.com/roundtables, we are at the stage where we're getting feedback from people on it. And the concept is just like in the business world, some business professionals have mastermind groups that they turn to. And, especially in the entrepreneurial world, you might have a mentor that's a part of that group that's been there before, maybe a sort of master entrepreneur. And then you have 8 to 10 other people that are part of that. And it's a close knit group. People can feel comfortable trading ideas, thoughts, being real with each other. We're in the process of looking at that concept for Product Collective. And so we've shared some information and are starting to capture some information from people who might want to be sort of early users of that concept for us. And part of it could even include, even though this group might be spread out throughout the country, you meet at industry and it's sort of your one time a year where you can actually connect with that group in person. But the roundtable concept is similar in that, we have a product mentor that might be at that VP or CPO level. You have other, attendees or sort of participants of the roundtable that are similar to you, maybe with a few years of product experience, but still, relatively early stage in their product career. And then throughout the year, we organize special sort of mastermind video sessions with, product authors, product leaders at other organizations. And it's sort of our way of curating a learning experience year round that we do at industry for 2 days, but it's like, what else can be done in those other 363 days from a learning perspective and a connections perspective? So that's one thing we're working on, and we kind of unveiled that at industry too, but it's something we're definitely still looking for feedback on as well.
Awesome. And Mike, if people want to reach out to you and give feedback, where would you want them to go?
Yeah, well, first of all, for that specific part, you can go to productcollective.com/roundtables and you could check that out. And then if you have feedback on it, there's a form right there that you could share it. You can also just reach out to me at mike@productcollective.com anytime. My email inbox is always open. Although, like John Zeratsky said, we will try to manage that a little bit better. And then I'm also on Twitter at @Belsito. That's BELSITO. And you could find me there for a mixture of product management, dad jokes, and, all sorts of things.
Always love a good dad joke, right?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure having you on today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the time. And yeah, hopefully I can be invited back in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. That does it for today's episode. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.